Right, well, welcome back to the Virtual Flower Show. My name's Martin Fish, and I've got with me a group of exhibitors here, all RHS Gold winners, so the best of the best we've got here. And we're going to answer a few more questions now. So we're going to start with one about Penstemons, and this question comes from Sharon. She's got a couple of Penstemons that she's growing in pots, and she's had them now for a few years, but they've never flowered. She cuts them back in the spring, they grow back nice and strong and healthy, but no flowers. So she just wants any ideas or any tips that we can give her to try and encourage some flowers this year. Let's make 2020 the year the Penstemons flower for Sharon. So anybody grow Penstemons? I do, but not in pots. Mine are in the garden.
Well, I do, but Vicky, you do. Go on.
No, I don't grow many. No, you Rosie, you're better. You're better with pens. You grow loads of Penstemon.
Yeah,
my brother breeds them, but you actually grow loads of them. So go on.
Okay, let's go with this. So Penstemons again in containers. Sounds as though she's pruning them at the right time. They're growing perfectly well. If they're not flowering, then the feed regime is something that's got to be looked at. For Penstemons to grow and flower properly, like any flowering plant, they need a load of K. They just got to have potassium. Tomato feed. From the beginning of the season, when they start into leaf, just give them tomato feed, and that should encourage them to put on some flowers. And if they're putting on a huge amount of foliage and becoming very, very green, I might advise that she actually takes a third of the growth out once the growth has got up to around about 6 inches. What's that? 15 centimeters. I'm not very good with this modern technology. Yeah, I would take half, a third of it out, thin out the amount of foliage that's there, because it just seems to be wanting to grow. And if you restrict that, that will then encourage it to actually put on some flowers. If it doesn't work this year, get rid of them and start again, to be honest, because it's not worth it. If you're growing them to be flowering and they're not doing it, just get rid of them and start again.
Okay, and there's lots of places you can buy them online at the moment, of
course.
So,
Absolutely.
Just get Googling them, Sharon. I think the other thing is make sure you've got them in a fairly sunny place as well, because they do like some sun on them. They'll take a little bit of shade, but they predominantly like an open, sunny, warm position, and the potash will hopefully encourage some nice flowers for you. Right, this is a question for Alec. We've got with us. It's disappeared. Oh, it's not. It's right in the middle of the screen there. This is a peony one, Alec. This is from Sue Bell, and she would like to know what and when to feed peonies, and what sort of fertilizer would you use. Now, we don't know whether these are in containers. I'm assuming they're growing in the ground. So how would you feed peonies?
Well, peonies generally aren't that hungry, it has to be said. So if you've got reasonably good soil, you probably don't need to feed them that often. Maybe once in the spring when the shoots are just coming through, or maybe in the autumn. You can use product placement. You can use some of our fertilizer, but any well-balanced general fertilizer will do. Certainly, I wouldn't recommend using Tomarite or anything like that. That's probably a bit too much. So something a bit more well-balanced, Grow More or something like that works very well. If you've got really sandy soil, of course, you'll need to make sure you do stay on top of feed. But if you've got reasonably good soil, most peonies tend to do very well without any feed at all.
Yeah, I mean, they've got that big fleshy root, haven't they, I suppose, which is a natural food store for them. If Sue hasn't done them now and wants to, it's still time she can give them a feed while they're growing, presumably. It won't do any harm.
Won't do any harm at all, no. It won't necessarily help them flower this year, but it will certainly help them flower for next year. Okay,
there you go. Thanks for that then, Alec, and hope that helps Sue. Right, let's have a look what else we've got. Questions. This one is from Anna. Anna would like some advice on a Tracheospurnum jasminoides, which is a lovely evergreen scented climber. And she planted it last year, and despite looking green and healthy, it hasn't grown an inch. So it's one of those sort of climbers that it's not totally hardy. It's a little bit delicate, certainly where I am in North Yorkshire. So anybody grown this? It's beautiful when it flowers. It's got the most beautifully sweet scented flowers. Well, I've as nobody's even twitching on this one. It's as if you've gone frozen on me on this one. Well, I've got one in a pot that came from Tynings Climbers, one of the exhibitors at the shows, and it for the first year, I must admit, mine did a similar thing. I know it just sat there in a container. I grow it in a pot purposely because if we get a cold winter, I can just lift it in somewhere where I give it a little bit of protection. But it didn't do anything for the first year. It just sat there. It was green and it was healthy. But once the roots get established, I think they take a while to get the roots down. And once the roots get into the new compost and it's had plenty of water and feed, it did put out some nice long tendrils and start to make a sort of a climbing bushy plant. So I think it's probably just a little bit of patience that you need with this one. Keep it watered, keep it somewhere sunny, and make sure that if it is in a pot, you're giving it a liquid feed, or if it's in the ground, keep it watered, especially at the moment the ground is very dry in some parts of the country. So I think this is the year it will now start to make growth, that it's put its roots out there. So I think the dog wants to go out, somebody.
Martin, what temperature would you say that's the minimum would take with the Trachyspermum?
Well, mine has had frost on it. I mean, this year it stayed out because we've had a very mild winter. I mean, I think they are hardy down to about -5. But if you start getting -10s, then it can do quite a lot of damage. So they are sort of that borderline hardy outside. So I think you've just got to be a bit wary. If you live in a very, very cold sort of northerly or high altitude, then it's worth just growing them somewhere very sheltered or in a big pot that you can move them. But lovely plant to grow and beautiful.
Do you think
scent.
putting horticultural fleece over them if you're in a cold area will actually help?
I think to a certain extent, yeah. I mean, the fleece will give a couple of degrees of frost protection. So if it's -5 or 6, it will give them that little bit of protection like a duvet. But if it drops to -15, a layer of fleece is neither use nor ornament really. So it's so yeah. Just think where you plant them, not anywhere too exposed. And